When you want something so much, it's often taking away from the essence of why you want it.
Often meditation is seen as a way to try to get somewhere or get away from something or transcend to a different reality. I just want to say we need you here in this reality, especially right now. And the point is not to transcend, but to be present in this reality, because this is where you can learn, this is where you can be of benefit, this is where you can love, this is where you can help.
So how can we build meditation as a practice to help us in our community as well?
That's a good question.
Welcome to the Grateful Podcast. Today I'm speaking with Susan Piver, best-selling author, meditation teacher, and the founder of the Open Heart Project, the world's largest virtual mindfulness community. Her work blends ancient Buddhist wisdom with a radically honest approach to modern life, offering a path to truth, love, and deeper inner clarity. Susan, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm very glad to be here.
Thank you. For anyone listening or watching, we just dealt with a lot of technical difficulties, and we are problem solvers. So I'm proud of us. Fist
Me
bump.
too. We did good. It's already a complete success.
Yes. Yeah, we really exercised patience right there. So, we're practicing what we preach.
Excellent point.
So my first question is a big one, but it's one that I struggle with, and I think a lot of people do as well. So I'm just going to jump right into it. If attachment is suffering, how can we pursue anything without losing ourselves in the chase?
That's a great question. If attachment is suffering, how can we, please say the last part?
Pursue anything without losing ourselves in the chase.
Yeah. Well, this is a very important point. And the first thing to know about attachment, I think, is that people who say you should not be attached or attachment leads to suffering, which on one level is certainly true, that those people are attached to non-attachment. So it's already over.
Yeah. Wow.
So attachment, I don't think means, although it certainly is presented as a way of not feeling anything, not feeling pain when something hurts, or not feeling too much joy when something's wonderful. But I think attachment means something more like not attaching to one part of the ride and trying to repel the other parts. So when you feel pain, you feel it and you ride that, and it's not pleasant. But if you're attached to no pain, then you're exhibiting attachment. And when things are joyful and wonderful, and you experience that, and it's not going to last, but you stay on the ride of your inner life as best you can, and that, I would say, is a great way to look at non-attachment.
It's almost like you're fully riding the wave of life. You're not trying to muffle anything. You're letting it all come to you and not trying to change anything. Is that right?
Something like that, and you're not trying to change anything. Of course, we don't want pain, and we don't want injustice, and we don't want, cruelty. So we should try to change those things. But as your inner experience arises, it will abide, and then it will dissolve. So as it dissolves, you can see that and acknowledge that, because normally we're trying to, we're caught up in hope and fear. I hope this and I fear that. That's reasonable. We're humans. But non-attachment has some more to do with noticing your hope and noticing your fear than trying to only have one and not the other.
When I think of attachment, I think of this book I read over the summer, The Laughing Sutra. Have you heard of it?
Mm-mm.
It's by Mark Seisman. I hope I'm saying that right, but very interesting fictional story. It caught my attention. I loved it, but it was about this, and there were a lot of components, but the main storyline was this one monk was trying to get the Laughing Sutra before he died, trying to read it because he read all of the different sutras. And he wanted to read the Laughing Sutra because he said, once I read that, that will be the completion to my enlightenment. I will become enlightened once I've read the last one. And when he read it, he just started laughing because he realized that he thought that this pursuit would get him enlightenment when his attachment to this thing getting him enlightenment was what was holding him back from enlightenment. And it's this idea of when you want something so much, it's often taking away from the essence of why you want it. And that paradox is so interesting to me.
I think it's really interesting that you find it so interesting, and I agree with you, and I do too. And that sounds fantastic. That's a great moral of the story.
So, if our attachment in our attachment to one thing getting us an outcome is what's holding us back from this, I mean, it's unrealistic to think that going to all become enlightened, right? But from, let's say, a higher state of consciousness, how can we pursue that higher state of consciousness without uh, getting lost and held back by our pursuit of it?
What is when you say higher state of consciousness, what do you mean? What is this higher state of consciousness?
That's a really good question. And I think that when I say that, it's almost a substitute. I don't want to say that we're all going to become enlightened or any of these things, but just, I guess, a more clear life, living a life of more clarity, of more inner peace, whatever that looks like to someone on a subjective level.
I think the answer is for many, many people, not for everyone, because no one thing is right for everyone. But a meditation practice is the way to develop these qualities of riding the waves of experience and noticing your state of mind. And it seems that the way is not higher consciousness, because in most Buddhist views, there is no such thing. There's only one consciousness, and you have it right now. But often meditation is seen as a way to try to get somewhere or get away
Mm.
from something or transcend to a different reality. And I just want to say, we need you here in this reality, especially right now. And the point is not to transcend, but to be present in this reality, because this is where you can learn, this is where you can be a benefit, this is where you can love, this is where you can help.
So important. And I think it's interesting because Western culture has definitely uh, made us stray away from these ideas. I heard you talk about in one of your solo podcast episodes how our culture is really just rooted in individualism and consumerism. And the way that we practice meditation in the Western world seems to reflect that. Business influencers endorse meditation as a productivity hack, and many people don't meditate to make themselves better for others, but they meditate for themselves, which I guess isn't a terrible thing. But you argue that these views on meditation are limiting the innate magic in the practice. Could you explain to me what you mean by that and how we could shift our lens and our goals around meditation to bring some of that magic back?
That is an awesome question. And thank you. It's so good and so beautifully phrased. And thank you for listening to my podcast. And you clearly listen carefully. And I cannot tell you how much I appreciate that. Thank you.
Of course. It was very good. I enjoyed it.
Thank you. So meditation is, as you say, I said, it's often presented as a way of withdrawing. And that way you can have less stress. And that, okay, sometimes that helps. But I don't think when meditation was first taught, 2,500 years ago in the Buddhist tradition anyway, that it was taught as a way of withdrawing from the world. It was taught as a way of entering the world fully and experiencing it and connecting with others and understanding the what's the word I'm looking for? The elemental energies of this world. And in Western culture, those things are never mentioned. And it's presented as a life hack or a self-help technique or a way to feel less stress. Again, those things are okay. But eventually, with that view alone, I'm going to tell you a big secret right now. Meditation will become boring and hard,
Mm.
because it is boring and it is hard. But without a connection to a spiritual sort of development, then it just dries up. And the more, as a practitioner, I'm sure you can, well, I'll ask you, is this true of you? When you practice, nothing's going on. I mean, literally nothing. And one could think, well, why am I doing this? I got a lot of other things to do, like play baseball and so on.
Hmm.
But when you look back, you see that your life has started to change. You feel more things. You feel more compassion for yourself and others. You feel more genuine in who you really are. You see things you hadn't seen before. Those are the mystical fruits of practice. And they happen in a mystical way, in a mysterious way, but they happen to millions and billions of people. So it's not like you got to be a wizard or anything for these things to happen. So the thing I will say in conclusion is a way to situate your practice in the realm of the magical or the transformational, as opposed to the realm of the mundane, is to have some sense of ritual in the way you practice. So it doesn't mean you have to wear a wizard hat or do funny dances or anything like that, unless you want to. It just means it's not a to-do that you cross off the list. So maybe you
Mm.
have a little shrine table. Maybe you light a candle. Maybe you try to do it at the same time on most days. Maybe you have a picture of something or someone. I see you want to say something. I want to hear it. Someone or something you aspire to be like. And when you practice, you offer your practice to that higher wisdom, whatever that means to you. What do you think about that?
Well, I just think you touched on something, and it's not often in these podcasts where there's something so that hits so home for me. But you just touched on something that I've been going through so deeply through the past few months, close to a year, where meditation has felt like more of a to-do, a box to check off my to-do list. And that's why I've seen myself move away from it, even though I know in my body and intellectually, but inside, like the benefits that I feel from it. Um, yeah, that just hit really home because meditation isn't just a box you're checking off your to-do list. It's something that elevates everything. But when you say that it elevates everything, then people will come from this consumeristic mindset where with the idea, well, it elevates everything. I can sell more with it. I can make more money with it. And that's where this problem lies, where we're taking the magic away from it. It's so fascinating.
Yeah, it, yes, and everything you say is extremely interesting to me. And the boring part, and it's like a relationship, by the way. You fall in love, and you're like, oh, I can't believe I never knew this before. This is amazing. This is incredible. I cannot wait to see you again. And then, oh, at some point, you're like, oh, you again. It's okay. It starts to become more ordinary. And
Yeah.
in meditation, that's good news, because when it starts to become boring, that's kind of a sign that you have stopped trying to entertain yourself with your practice. And even though it's not fun and it can last a long time, these results are still going to come forward in your post meditation experience, which is the rest of your life. So it's important to stay as best you can. You are the judge, you are the boss of you. So you make your own decisions about the practice. But once it stops becoming exciting, which is pretty soon, pretty fast, happens pretty fast, something more profound is possible.
What does your meditation practice look like?
I'm looking over there, there's my shrine. Well, I try to practice every day, and I practice for between 0 and 60 minutes every day. And I have been a practitioner for, well, sometimes it's 0, but I still think about it. And I've been practicing for way longer than you've been alive. So I do breath awareness meditation, just very simple. It's an eyes open practice, not eyes closed. That's an important difference. And then I do practices my teachers have taught me and that I want to do that have more of a text associated with them.
What's the difference between an eye open and an eye closed meditation besides the fact that your eyes are open and closed?
Mhm. Yeah. So eyes open and gaze cast down. So it's not just like staring out. I when you practice with your eyes closed, it emphasizes the quality of withdrawing.
Okay.
And then when your practice is over and you open your eyes, you have to come back.
It's a disconnection.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When you practice with your eyes open and your meditation is over, you don't have to come back because you never went anywhere. So there can be less of a divide between your meditation practice and the rest of your life, which is really the important part. And the last thing I'll say about it is, well, two last things. One is we're practicing being awake and present. And it's much easier to be awake and present when your eyes are open. And finally, it's less likely that you'll fall asleep if you sit with your eyes open.
Yes, that's true. I know I and some others have struggled with the early morning meditations and almost drifting back into a place of sleep.
Well, that's understandable, and especially your age. Maybe it would be better to meditate at night or when your day is over. Either whatever time you choose is fine. Just one that works for you is best.
Yeah, I hope you're enjoying this episode of the Grateful Podcast. I'm interrupting to let you know that it would mean the world to me if you could share this episode with someone that you think would enjoy it, or leave a review down below so I can learn what I can do better and what I'm doing well with this podcast. It's a passion project, and I really want it to turn into something that helps people everywhere. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoy the rest of the episode. So, we talked about how we've taken the magic out of meditation in Western culture. Um, my question is, can us Western meditators, the average Western meditator, can we call ourselves Buddhists, or would that be uh, going too far?
Well, you could call yourself a Buddhist if you become a Buddhist. And if you're a meditator and you meditate in a Buddhist tradition, you are someone who meditates in a Buddhist tradition, and you can do that for the rest of your life. You don't have to change anything. You can be Christian, you can be atheist, you can be whatever you want, and meditation can be a helpful part of your life. But if you want to commit to the Buddhist path and become a Buddhist, that's different. And nobody has to do that, by the way. Just want to be clear about that. But it's called, the ceremony by which one formally commits to the Buddhist path is called taking refuge. You take refuge in what are called the three jewels: Buddha, which means awake; Dharma, which means wisdom; and Sangha, which means community. Then after the refuge vow, you say, I'm a Buddhist. Before that, you
That's
say,
really
I'm
interesting.
Buddhist curious.
Yeah, I think that's an important differentiation. Not that I want to get too caught up in the labels of things, but when you hear people, I mean, it's common to hear people call themselves Buddhists, and I've had that question for a while. Um, so you just one of the key elements there you talked about was community, um, and going back to the uh, values of our society, individualism is one of them, and I think. Uh, Meditation has often been correlated with more individual gains. So, at least in Western culture, so how can we build meditation as a practice to help us in our community as well?
Hmm, that's a good question. It's, it's, I don't know that your practice can help your community, except you will be more wise and more compassionate and more fierce. So those things are helpful. But if you practice with others somehow by going to a meditation center that's trustworthy, not a silly, nutty one, and or you have an online meditation gathering, there are many such places now, or you just meditate with a friend on text. You just say, we're going to sit together. Okay. And then you sit and say goodbye when the practice is over. Somehow that third piece makes your practice more rich, because this is where the Dharma comes to life, when we're interacting with other human beings. Otherwise, it remains somewhat conceptual. So the Sangha piece, the community piece, brings it down to earth. And it's an important thing to add in a way that works for you.
Yeah. So another one of my stuck points with understanding Buddhism and meditation and all of this is even right there, you said that when you meditate, you become more wise in all of these things. And I found this paradox in Western spiritual practice where we've adopted meditation and other Buddhist principles as hacks and tools for self-improvement, but Buddhism itself is based in the idea of non-self. So, how do we reconcile these two seemingly opposing views, and what does Buddhism invite us to do with the concept of self?
Yeah. Well, you are asking the greatest questions, and these are the key questions. So thank you. So, yeah, no self is interesting. I mean, you don't have a self. I don't have a self, but I see you and I'm sitting
Yeah,
right here. So, what is up with that paradox? So, no self does not mean you're not here. It doesn't mean there's no such thing as you. It means there's no separate self. You are not separate from the causes and conditions that gave rise to you. Your parents, their parents, the food they ate, the cultures they grew up in. If one of those things had changed, you wouldn't be here. So you didn't get here in a spaceship. You are the result of many, 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 many causes and conditions that came before you. So there is no separate you, no separate self.
interesting.
But at the same time, here you are. So no self, again, doesn't mean you're not here. It means there is no separate you. This is all one reality.
So, I've heard this described in the metaphor of we're all a part of an ocean, we're just different waves in it. Do you agree with that metaphor?
Um, yes, on a relative level, sure. But on an absolute level, there's not even waves or ocean. So
Interesting.
I don't
Yeah.
understand it, so I can't explain it.
Yeah,
But
that's a
but once somebody asked a great meditation teacher, uh, now deceased, but a Tibetan meditation master, uh, is the idea behind meditation to cultivate the inner observer? And this meditation master said, yes, but then you let go of the inner observer.
it's crazy because these questions and these answers are things that no one quite understands, and the people that do understand them cannot describe that. They can describe them to the best of their ability, but their description will never make you truly understand. It's amazing.
You are absolutely right. And that to me is what makes these teachings trustworthy. You can't explain them with charts and graphs. You can't argue for them. You can't argue against them. The deeper you get into answering these very important questions, the more confusing it is, in a sense. And the
Hmm.
more you see, well, this is beyond conventional mind. And that is what makes it awesome.
You wrote meditation, or you said in a podcast episode, sorry, meditation is a scientifically proven way of being more awesome, which was just awesome. I love that line. I think it was your first line. I'm like, this is the best. But my question for you is, where do you think the science aligns, and where does it fall short in capturing the real magic of meditation?
So, if I understood your question, yeah, science has proven that meditation is awesome. Yeah, it's like,
Right.
that's all. Thank you. Thank you very much. Um, and Western science has spent maybe the last 50 or 60 years cataloging, or maybe 100 years, cataloging painful mind states, depression and psychosis and stress and so on, and then applied meditation to these difficult states and come up with conclusions. Okay, but Buddhist wisdom has spent more than 2,500 years studying positive mental states like compassion and equanimity and patience and uh, discipline and so on, and how meditation applies to them. So they're just coming at it from two different ways. And I think one of the reasons the scientific consequences are so emphasized is because it helps us as Westerners to relax. Like, oh, science says it's right. Oh, okay, well, it must be okay then because there's proof. But there are other kinds of proof than what comes out of a scientific experiment or a research project. And anecdotal proof uh, is worth considering as well. So I don't know. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, yeah. I've never quite thought about the different types of proof, which shows me how uh, pigeonholed I am in this Western idea of what truth is. And I find that interesting. What do you mean by anecdotal truth? Can you give me some examples?
Yeah, things that you've observed rather than proven. Like if you're going to play baseball after this, so you know who's good, you know who struggles with things, even the good players struggle with things. You don't need a scientific experiment or a research project. You see it. So it's
Right.
anecdotally observed. That's all I need.
That's interesting. Um, why do you think we've come to a point where we need this scientific proof to back up philosophies that for 2,000, 2,500 years have worked, have produced results?
That's another kick bleep question. Um, well, I mean, you could have an answer that's rooted in history, like the Industrial Revolution and the rise of science and so forth, that we've all been raised that way. But in Buddhism, maybe you've heard, is described as the middle way. So what does that mean? And this relates to your question. Uh, when the Buddha became enlightened, according to all the anecdotes, uh, and he said, we practice the middle way between two extremes. And the two extremes are the following. The first one is called eternalism, which means there's an exterior God or something that is keeping an eye on you, and hopefully you'll do things right. And then when you die, you'll have some kind of eternal reward. And maybe that's true. Buddha didn't say that's not true. He just said, we don't do that. The other extreme is called nihilism. Nihilism means there is no other meaning besides what you can see and touch. There's no afterlife. There's no deity. There's no nothing. So just what you can see and feel is true, and everything else is not. So mystery, no such thing. Things beyond conventional mind, no such thing. Energies that you can't see, no such thing. So Buddha also didn't say that's not right. He said, we don't do that one either. This one says there's meaning in everything you do, and it's going to be a tick in the pro or con column. And this one says there is no meaning beyond what you create with your mind.
Mm-hmm.
When in the Buddha's time, probably this one, I'm using my own hands, eternalism was more popular. Now nihilism is more popular in many cases. And there's this sense of fear of the sacred and as being either not true or some kind of BS, some kind of New Age BS, or connected to religious fundamentalism, which is dangerous. So it kind of makes sense that people would be like, well, I'm only going to go with science, but we're not raised or trained or taught or exposed to mystical traditions and mysteries, and the unseen is considered weird woo-woo, or else
Yeah,
people get lost in New Age fantasies about it. So it's complicated.
that's the answer to everything, right? It's
Well,
complicated.
if only it was that
Yeah,
simple.
right. Yeah, it's true. So as in well, in the past, I don't know, 50, 60 years, we've seen more people turn to Buddhism and ancient and Eastern philosophy as uh, as a way to fill the gap they feel in meaning. As societies turn more towards nihilism, it seems like people are coming back towards the middle way right? Or in between the more would you say externalism and nihilism?
Eternalism.
It's
Eternalism.
eternalism and nihilism. It seems like people turned away from eternalism toward nihilism, and now maybe are coming back toward more Eastern philosophy. Why do you think people are doing that? What do humans crave that they're not finding in other philosophies?
Well, I don't know the answer to that. But what I see is, especially now with our current cultural and political situation of incredible divisiveness and vitriol, uh, and the uh, flaws of a consumerist society,
Hmm.
I think many, many, many people are now wondering, what else is there? The things that I have staked my life on don't seem stable anymore. So maybe I should rethink some things. And, that's the good news and the bad news about what is happening now in our world is it's not working.
Hmm.
So what else is possible?
Yeah, and that's a good question, and I think that yeah, that's what people are trying to search for. People want meaning. I don't think people want to be nihilistic. I I would say that religiously, spiritually, I'm an agnostic, a curious agnostic. But I don't I am curious, and I'm constantly searching for something, for what I would believe the truth is, or some higher meaning, because I want there to be meaning. I want life to be meaningful. I think that's a common want among people.
Yes, absolutely. And then you try to find meaning in certain things like relationships or success or I don't know what. And then, sure, those things are great when they work, but there's still something missing, it seems like. And yeah, what does it mean? Is,
Well, a lot of people will hear something like that and they'll go back to the common Buddhist idea, life is suffering. But what's interesting, and what I've heard you say, is that translation of dukkha to suffering is actually not entirely correct. It's more of a life is dissatisfaction. I find that very interesting. What implications do you think that could have if we flip the mindset of people from life is suffering to life is dissatisfaction?
yeah, the First Noble Truth is what you're talking about of
Yes.
the Four Noble Truths. And it's often presented, just as you say, as life is suffering, but the Sanskrit word may be more accurately translated as unsatisfying. Life is unsatisfying. Even the most satisfying things eventually fade away, at least, or you think, oh, it's not as great as I thought it would be. So then you try something else. Oh, well, maybe this will be satisfying. And then the same thing happens. I think life is suffering sounds like a big, you know, downer. Uh, but life is dissatisfying. That doesn't sound super cheerful, but it sounds easier. I think one can actually understand that it's not satisfying. When I can try all the conventional things and they could be great, as mentioned, but this yearning for something deeper is still present.
Hmm. And the idea is that will be present no matter what.
The idea is that I don't know because I don't know what happens
Right.
after this
Yeah.
because I am just a practitioner trying to figure it out too. But the idea is that this yearning for something, this is one way of looking at it. Maybe it's always present, but when it is present, it opens the gate to compassion for others because at some point you start to see, well, I got these things or I didn't get these things. or whatever I got is fine, but it's not making me happy. Actually, the only thing that seems to make sense after a certain point is how can I be helpful in this world? And that is the way towards meaning.
Well, you are definitely being helpful in this world through all of your books and this. And
So are
I
you.
have to say that I am, although life may be dissatisfying, I'm definitely satisfied with this conversation.
Me too.
Yeah. All right. I do have to get to baseball, so I'm gonna end it right here. But thank you so much for coming on, Susan. Let my audience know where they can find you.
Yes, Susan Piver, Piver. I have an online community called the Open Heart Project. And if you Google that, you'll find me. And I hope you win. Good luck with your game.
Thank
And
you. I appreciate it.
you're welcome. And it's so good to talk to you. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you for tuning in to this absolutely fantastic interview episode of the Grateful Podcast with Susan Piver. I'm very sad that I had to leave early for my baseball game, which we did win, by the way, for those of you interested, because this conversation was one of the most profound conversations I've had in my life. I'm an avid meditator. Avid's a stretch right now, but I would like to be an avid meditator. And the insights I got from this conversation were amazing, and I hope that you guys all agree. I did an episode recently where I talked about, or I answered the hardest questions in the world at 18 years old. If you want to go check that out, that would be a great follow up to this episode. It is called Answering the World's Hardest Questions at 18. It will be linked in the description below. Thank you so much for listening, watching, and I hope you have a great week.